the forces which shape and compose society can be divided into three different realms. The first realm constitutes the environmental conditions from which humanity evolved, which it is adapting to, and which provides it with the resources it needs to survive and prosper. The second realm includes the biological characteristics of the human body, the individual and collective human psychology, and the resulting social behavioral patterns of the members of a society. It could therefore be labeled humanity's biopsychosocial landscape. The third realm incorporates all emerged social structures which serve to administer human affairs. These societal institutions are exclusively human constructs and are supposed to ensure stability, order, and prosperity. The holistic ecosystem Earth, including all life forms, all inanimate matter and energy, from the planet's core to the outer atmosphere, and all influences from surrounding celestial bodies, is the ultimate limiting factor for humanity. Independent of our ability to harness technology and administer human affairs, there are limits in space and the amount of resources on the planet that simply cannot be exceeded. Also, if the ecosystem's delicate balance is somehow put in jeopardy through human or other influences, the continuation of the human species is unsustainable. Through the means of biological evolution, Homo sapiens emerged within this ecosystem roughly 200,000 years ago. This organism developed with a set of basic needs which have to be fulfilled for it to thrive. Independent of its genotype, its culture, or its social status, every human being needs clean air, water, nutrition, health, warmth, shelter, and positive social interaction. As the human species developed from ancestors who depended greatly on the integrity of their social structures, it is an absolute necessity for every human being to maintain positive relationships in order to be healthy. The degree to which these innate human needs are met determines the overall quality of life of the individual. Therefore, it should be the focus of any given society to ensure that these needs are met for all of its members. In its application, this simple principle is the basis of highly complex social structures. On a psychological level, the combination of needs with the environmental conditions surrounding the human organism is the basis for primary values. Depending on the abundance of available resources and the harshness of the climate and vegetation in the organism's environment, the basic needs are expressed in a different set of primary values. If a primate community enjoys a high availability of resources and a relatively safe and stable environment, their primary values are more likely to promote sharing, pacifism, and equality. However, if a community is exposed to harsher conditions with limited resources, the primary values are prone to promote egotism, aggression, and hierarchy. This intrinsic mechanism of adapting to environmental conditions with specific social behavior has been repeatedly documented in primate species. From an evolutionary perspective, primary values develop to increase behavioral plasticity. They serve to adapt individual and collective human behavior to the present environmental conditions. Through such behavioral adaptation, primary values ensure social stability and drive the individual to meet its basic needs. The existence of values, and therefore the ability to value, requires an evaluating agent, a means to distinguish positive from negative influences. Humans are able to make this distinction because they have a set of feelings which responds to given circumstances in a specific manner. While we may differentiate true and false by means of conscious thought, only through feelings and emotions are we able to introduce a perception of good and bad. Such feelings therefore evolve to motivate the organism to satisfy its needs and to divert circumstances which could endanger its ability to do so. This, in turn, ensures that the individual takes steps necessary to enable survival, reproduction, and kin survival. Feelings drive a human being via two different mechanisms. Intrinsic motivation, which directly influences behavior by altering the individual's responsive approach, and directive motivation, which indirectly guides behavior by steering the organism towards positively or away from negatively perceived circumstances. Fear, for instance, which may be triggered by circumstances endangering the individual, intrinsically mobilizes a defensive response to environmental stimuli. The intermediate achievement of a successful defense then contributes to the fulfillment of the needs for security. Grief, on the other hand, employs a strong directive motivational mechanism. As grief is perceived as an unpleasant emotional state, an individual is driven to divert circumstances which may induce grief. Therefore, grief acts as a motivator for a preemptive defense, which also contributes to the fulfillment of the need for security. Additionally, grief may also work as an intrinsic motivator, promoting social bonding through the mutual display of empathy. Primary values were the basis from which the structure of societal institutions originally emerged from, and still form the foundations of societal institutions today. In the course of human history, these social constructs continuously morphed and novel institutional structures emerged from previous concepts. It is important to point out that the emergence of societal institutions wasn't managed by conscious reflection and design, and therefore aimed for the well-being of the population. Rather, this process was guided by the interest of various power structures and the emergent value system of the population. Such value systems are far more complex than the collective of primary values. A value system is comprised of a set of values which serve to assess complex social conditions and dictate the cultural norm. Such values arise from wants which are induced by emerged societal institutions and spread as memes within a culture. The value system of a culture, which is less dependent on environmental conditions and basic needs, and more on social constructs and generated wants, further reinforces and defends the societal institutions it is based upon. These synergistic institutions in turn indoctrinate future generations to the prominent values and beliefs they reflect. This ensures the maintenance of a value system which further reinforces these structures. A society or culture depends on the continuous transfer of values. This is achieved through their assimilation and promotion by each individual. As a result of this continuous social learning, individuals become reflections of their social environment. Their value system now dictates the way in which they perceive their social surroundings, what is regarded as normality, and what deviates from that frame of reference. Anthropologist Robert Boyd and biologist Peter J. Richardson argue, social learning allows human population to accumulate reservoirs of adaptive information over many generations, leading to the cumulative cultural evolution of highly adaptive social institutions and technology. However, the same psychological mechanisms that create this benefit necessarily come with a built-in cost. To get the benefits of social learning, humans have to be credulous, for the most part accepting the ways that they observe in their society as sensible and proper. Such credulity opens up human minds to the spread of maladaptive beliefs. Such maladaptive beliefs have persisted throughout history and do to this day, However, just as values are constantly passed on and conserved, they also experience reform. Through such reformation, it came to pass that after being an integral part of society, values and beliefs that promoted the persistence of human sacrifice, torture, slavery, the persecution of homosexuals, or the apartheid were discarded and replaced with values allowing for more social stability. Such social change is a slow process due to the extreme persistence of values. In order to function within a society, every single member has to conform to some degree to its prominent values. This implies their integration into the individual's identity, which is why ideas challenging such values are often met with contempt or even violence, as they are perceived as a threat to the identity of whoever upholds them. Within lies the great arrogance of man, the tendency of civilizations to regard their values and beliefs as finalized and thoroughly justified. While past societies are being condemned for how blind they have been to the atrocities they committed, present generations tend to be just as oblivious when it comes to the inhumanities perpetrated by their own culture. In the same manner, future generations might look down on present society, feeling disgust towards our relative acceptance of the millions that die every year from starvation and preventable diseases, or the systematic destruction of the ecosystem and the eradication of countless animal and plant species. Now let's take a look at the basic structure of societal institutions dominant throughout the world today. When picturing institutions, one might imagine specific infrastructure in which dealings of that organization take place, or the people that are employed in that sector. While institutions obviously need infrastructure, commodities and laborers in order to function, they are rooted in the metaphysical realm, as an idea or a concept. Institutions are structures or mechanisms which are defined through a common understanding of their function and serve a social purpose by directing the cooperative behavior of a set of individuals. Therefore, institutions can only exist so long as the population regard them as an integral part of their society and vanish if their preservation is no longer justified. An institution may lose its authority by a gradual reformation of the population's value system, as in the case of slavery or laws prohibiting homosexuality. Another strong catalyst for social change is the rise of novel technology, which may quickly render age-old institutions obsolete. Modern medicine, for instance, rapidly replaced institutionalized practices such as bloodletting, which had persisted for centuries. However, this is not to say that simply by proposing superior concepts, one will be able to implement major changes in the structure of societal institutions. For one, this is due to the influence of ruling power structures, which will of course try to preserve the constructs that perpetuate their power. Furthermore, there is another obstacle for institutional modification, which is rooted in the value system of the population. For an institution to emerge and prevail, it needs to have a strong tendency for self-preservation. This tendency is mainly anchored in the consciousness of the people, as power isn't generated by the powerful, but in the minds of those that submit. As individuals of a society identify themselves greatly through present institutions, they are generally reluctant to replace or abolish them, and so they serve as the self-appointed guardians of the status quo. Therefore, in order to implement major structural changes, the general population must lose trust in those institutions, and the influence of ruling power structures must be overcome.